The wind sliced through the mountain pass like a living thing, sharp and unforgiving. It carried the smell of pine sap, frozen earth, and old snow, layered with something far worse. Fear. Dusk was falling fast, the sun bleeding out behind jagged peaks, leaving the land suspended between light and darkness. In that narrow stretch of wilderness, where trails vanished and echoes lingered too long, a woman stood beside a broken wagon and fought the urge to scream. Instead, she whispered, "Help me." Her voice barely existed, swallowed almost instantly by the wind. She tried again, forcing the words past a throat tight with panic. "My ex is here." Miss Clara Hale had never imagined her life would narrow down to a single moment like this. She had been a schoolteacher, still was, she told herself, someone who believed in chalk dust, neat handwriting, and the quiet miracle of children learning to read. Now her hands, once stained with ink, shook uncontrollably as she clutched her coat around her. The frontier had stripped her down to survival. The wagon lay ruined. Its axle snapped clean, the canvas ripped open and flapping weakly like a torn sail. Her books were scattered across the snow. Spellers, arithmetic slates, a primer with a pressed wildflower marking the page. One mule had broken loose and vanished into the trees hours ago. The other lay on its side, sides heaving, eyes dull. Clara had tried everything she knew. It hadn't been enough. Nothing ever was with Jonah. She kept her back against the rocks, the way he'd taught her. Ironically, years ago, when his lessons had still felt like protection instead of control. Her eyes never stopped moving. Every shadow looked like a man. Every sound felt like footsteps closing in. Then the forest shifted. Not loudly, not suddenly, just enough. A presence stepped out of the tree line, and Clara's breath caught so hard it hurt. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wrapped in buckskin the color of old leather. Snow dusted his boots and beard as if he belonged to the storm itself. A rifle rested in his hands with casual certainty, neither threatening nor passive, simply ready. Elias Crow. Stories about him drifted through frontier towns like smoke. Some said he'd been a soldier who never came back the same. Others claimed he'd lived with native tribes, or alone, or not entirely among the living at all. To Clara, in that moment, he looked like the last solid thing in a world coming apart. Her whisper had reached him. Elias took in the scene without urgency. The broken wagon, the dead mule, the way the woman stood ready to bolt despite exhaustion and cold. He saw fear, but also intelligence. Discipline. She hadn't panicked. She'd endured. "Who's here?" he asked, voice low-controlled. "My ex-husband," Clara said. Saying it aloud felt like tearing open an old wound. Jonah Pike. The name landed heavily. Elias's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Jonah Pike had passed through these mountains before, loud, cruel, riding confidence like armor. The war had left many men twisted. Jonah had chosen to twist others with him. "I left him," Clara continued, words spilling now. "I took a teaching post beyond the pass. I thought distance would end it." A sharp crack echoed uphill. Elias raised one finger. Silence snapped into place. Boots scraped stone somewhere above them. A man laughed, careless and familiar. Clara's stomach dropped. "He didn't come alone," she whispered. Elias didn't ask how she knew. He already trusted her instincts. He motioned her closer to the rock face, positioning her where no one could come from behind. Snow began to fall, slow at first, then thicker, faster. The sky closed in. A storm was forming, fast and violent. "Stay close," he murmured. They moved. Elias chose a path no map would show, through spruce and stone, along trails carved by animals and memory. Clara followed, stumbling at first, then finding his rhythm. A gunshot split the air. Bark exploded from a tree inches from Elias's shoulder. He shoved her down and fired back once. Not to kill, to confuse. They ran. Snow blinded them. Wind howled. Clara's lungs burned. She slipped on ice and cried out as pain shot through her ankle. Elias caught her wrist, hauled her upright, and didn't let go. "You trust me?" he asked, eyes locked on hers. She nodded, because she had no other choice. and because something in his voice felt unbreakable. By the time they reached his cabin, night had fully claimed the mountains. The structure was low and half buried into the hillside, built to survive storms and solitude. Inside, warmth returned slowly, painfully. Elias checked her ankle, wrapped it carefully. "Why now?" he asked quietly. Clara stared into the fire, jaw trembling. "He said if he couldn't have me, no one would." Elias looked away. Outside, the storm roared, and somewhere in the dark, Jonah Pike was still searching. Morning arrived without mercy. The storm had passed, but it left the mountains locked in a silence so complete it felt unnatural, like the world itself was waiting for something to break. Pale winter light seeped through the narrow window of the cabin, revealing frost clinging to the logs and a thin layer of snow that had crept inside through the cracks. Smoke curled weakly from the dying fire, carrying the scent of pine and damp wool. Elias was already awake. He moved outside before the sun fully rose, rifle slung across his back, boots crunching softly in fresh snow. He knelt near the creek, brushing powder aside with 2 fingers. Tracks. Several. Heavy. Careless. Whoever Jonah had brought with him wasn't afraid of being seen. That worried him more than stealth ever would. Inside the cabin, Clara woke with a sharp inhale, as if pulled from a dream she couldn't remember. For a heartbeat, warmth surrounded her. Then reality rushed back in. The cave, Jonah's voice, the way Elias had stood between her and the firelight without hesitation. She sat up too fast and winced. Her ankle throbbed. Elias returned quietly, setting a tin cup beside her before she even spoke. Steam rose from it. "Drink," he said. Their fingers brushed when she took it. His hands were rough, scarred, steady. Hers still trembled. "Why are you really helping me?" Clara asked, staring into the dark liquid. Elias didn't answer right away. He crouched near the fire, feeding it carefully, as if words required the same caution. "Because men like him don't stop," he said finally. "They just change how they hunt." That truth settled heavy between them. They ate in silence, dried meat, hard bread softened in coffee. It wasn't awkward. It was alert. Listening silence. The kind born of danger, where every sound mattered. Outside, a branch cracked in the distance. Clara stiffened. Elias noticed. He reached into his pack and handed her a knife. Simple, balanced, honest steel. "If it comes close," he said, guiding her grip, "you don't hesitate." He didn't lecture. He showed her once. How to brace her thumb. Where to aim if she had to. Clara mirrored him. Her hands shook at first, then steadied. By midday, the air shifted. Voices carried through the trees, low, confident, careless. Clara recognized one instantly. Jonah. Her chest tightened as his voice slipped through the forest, intimate and mocking, calling her by the name he'd always used when he wanted to remind her she belonged to him. Elias's expression hardened, but he stayed calm. He led her out the back of the cabin and down toward the creek. The ice groaned beneath their steps, thin and dangerous. He crossed quickly, then snapped branches behind them, dragging his boots wide to leave a false trail. Halfway through the brush, he doubled back, pulling her into cover so dense it clawed at their coats and skin. When he raised his hand, she froze. When he moved, she followed. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. A wolf appeared on a ridge above them, gray against gray, watching. Clara held her breath. Elias glanced up briefly, then away. The wolf didn't follow. They reached the limestone cave as dusk returned, the sky bruised purple and gold. The cave breathed cold air, damp and echoing. Elias built a fire so small it barely dared to exist, shielding the light with stone. Clara's body began to shake uncontrollably. Cold, fear, the release of holding herself together too long. Elias sat beside her and covered her hands with his own. "Breathe," he said quietly. She matched his rhythm. In, out. Slowly, the shaking stopped. She spoke then, voice low, about the school, the children who arrived hungry and hopeful. How teaching made the world feel orderly again, like chaos, could be reasoned with if you tried hard enough. Elias listened. When she asked about him, he stared into the fire. "I didn't come back whole," he said. Nothing more. Night closed in. A torch flared at the mouth of the cave, casting warped shadows across the walls. Jonah's silhouette filled the entrance, stretched and monstrous. "Clara," he called softly. "You're cold. Come home." Elias rose, placing himself between Jonah and the firelight, calm as stone. "Leave," he said. Jonah laughed and raised his gun. The cave erupted. Gunfire shattered stone. Smoke burned the air. Elias lunged, driving Jonah into darkness. Boots scraped. Breath collided. Clara knocked the torch away. Flame died with a hiss. In the black, Elias used the cave, angles, echoes, patience. Jonah swung wildly, fueled by rage and desperation. Elias waited. Then he struck. When it ended, Jonah lay gasping, disarmed, humiliated, but alive. "Go," Elias said. "Now." Jonah staggered into the night, hatred bleeding into the dark. "I'll be back." Elias watched until the forest swallowed him whole. Clara cried afterward, not loudly, not long. Elias stayed beside her until dawn light spilled into the cave. They stepped back into the world changed. Trust had taken root. The trail toward the valley narrowed as the land fell away beneath them. Snow thinned, giving way to wet earth and exposed stone, but the cold stayed sharp, clinging to skin and bone. Elias set the pace, steady, deliberate, while Clara followed, favoring her injured ankle but refusing to slow him down. She had learned something important in the mountains. Pain could be managed, but hesitation could get you killed. They didn't talk much. When they did, it was practical. Where to step, when to stop, how to listen. By the second day, Clara noticed the change in herself. She watched the wind ripple grass and knew when it meant weather. She recognized the warning silence of birds. Elias showed her how to set a simple snare, how to test water before drinking. In return, she taught him letters in the dirt with a stick, shaping his name slowly. Elias. He studied it like it mattered. Trust grew in small, unspoken ways. He handed her the rifle when his hands were full. She watched his blind side without being asked. Neither mentioned Jonah, but both felt his presence like a shadow stretching behind them. They felt it again at Dead Man's Creek. The switchback above the gorge was narrow, stone walls rising on one side, a long fall on the other. Elias halted abruptly, fist raised. Then the first shot rang out. Stone shattered inches from Clara's face. She dropped instinctively, heart slamming against her ribs. More gunfire followed, wild, hurried. Jonah had brought men. At least 3. Elias moved fast. "Up," he said low and sharp. He took the high ground in a rush of motion, boots finding holds that shouldn't exist. His rifle cracked in controlled bursts. Not reckless, not cruel. Purposeful. A rider charged from below, shouting. Elias fired once. The horse screamed and went down hard, throwing its rider into the dirt. The man lay stunned, groaning. Elias didn't finish him. That moment almost killed him. A shadow rose behind Elias, knife flashing. Clara saw it before Elias did. Time stretched thin. She didn't scream. She moved. The knife Elias had given her found its mark. The man cried out and stumbled back, clutching his arm, then fled downslope in panic. Clara stood there shaking, breath ragged, realization crashing over her. She had chosen to fight. The remaining men scattered when they realized the ground itself was against them. The mountains had picked a side. They reached the valley town by dusk, bloodied, exhausted, and standing. The sheriff hesitated when Jonah appeared later, bruised but smiling, spinning a story polished with charm and lies. For a moment, it looked like the past might win again. Clara stepped forward. Her voice didn't shake. "I'm done being afraid." She told the truth. All of it. Others spoke too. Men who had seen Jonah's temper. Women who recognized the look in Clara's eyes. Evidence surfaced. The smile slipped from Jonah's face. The law was thin, but it held. Jonah Pike was jailed to await transport. That night, lamplight filled the small room Clara rented above the schoolhouse. Elias sat at the table, awkward and quiet, while she guided his hand across paper. CROW. He wrote it once. Then again. The second time it was steady. Elias left before dawn. No goodbyes. No promises. The mountains were calling him back, and Clara, stronger now, let him go. Spring did not arrive all at once. It crept into the mountains carefully, as if unsure it would be welcomed after the long cruelty of winter. Snow retreated inch by inch from the higher trails, revealing gray stone, damp soil, and the first stubborn blades of grass. The pass opened again, not as an invitation, but as a quiet reminder that life, no matter how battered, always finds a way forward. Clara Hale stood at the doorway of the schoolhouse on the first morning it reopened. The building was small and weather-worn, its walls scarred by seasons of wind and cold. Inside, rough benches filled with children, miners' sons, ranchers' daughters, faces smudged with dirt and curiosity. Clara smoothed her skirt, picked up a piece of chalk, and began again. Her handwriting was steady now. When the wind rattled the windows, she did not flinch. When a door slammed outside, her heart did not race. Fear no longer decided who she was. Each evening, as the sun sank behind the jagged peaks, Clara lingered at the doorway a moment longer than necessary. She watched the mountain pass, the same stretch of land that had nearly broken her and then rebuilt her. She never spoke Elias's name aloud, but lived quietly in her thoughts, tied to the smell of pine smoke and the memory of steady hands in the dark. High above the valley, Elias Crow moved along the ridgeline like a shadow returning to its natural place. He watched the town once, just once. From that distance, the schoolhouse looked small and fragile, but he knew better now. So was Clara once. So had he been. That night, under a moon thin as a blade, Elias descended unseen. He left something at the schoolhouse door, a book wrapped in oilcloth. Inside were poems copied carefully in a rough hand. Lines about rivers that kept moving even when frozen. About storms that passed without asking permission. About standing still long enough to endure and moving on when it was time. He did not sign it. Clara found the book the next morning. She knew who it was from before she opened it. She pressed it to her chest once, just once, then placed it on her desk where the children couldn't see her hand shake. Weeks later, Jonah Pike was transported out of the valley. Chains rattled as he was loaded onto a wagon bound east. He did not look at Clara. She did not look at him. Some endings did not require witnesses. Life settled into a new rhythm. Clara taught. The children learned. Laughter filled the schoolhouse where fear once lingered. At night, Clara read by firelight. Ankle healed, spine straighter than before. She no longer measured her life by what she had escaped, but by what she chose to build. Far above, Elias walked the high trails, rifle on his shoulder, his name written once in ink and twice in memory. He remained a solitary man, but no longer an empty one. He had stood for something when it mattered, and that knowledge stayed with him, warmer than any fire. Their paths did not cross again, and yet they were forever changed. The mountains kept their secret, holding it in stone and snow and wind. A story of fear faced, trust earned, and strength found in the unlikeliest of places. If this story stayed with you, if it reminded you that resilience often begins with a whisper, take a moment to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this survive because you listen,